So, welcome everybody. Welcome here, and welcome to everyone around the world at home. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Maartje Pronk, and I'm the Product Development Manager with Max TapWater. So, we're here today to talk about clean water, one of the basics of life. It's a sustainable development goal all of itself, but it also underlies a lot of the other SDGs, such as health, education. And today we're going to be talking with three experts in the field on how can we deliver clean water to underserved communities at home. And especially how can we do this from a social business perspective. But before I introduce our panel, I first want to get some thoughts from the audience. And if you're at home, please write in the chat box, write along. But I'm going to be asking the people here in the audience, what do you think about when you think about clean water? Can I have some thoughts? Just yell them. We don't have enough to drink. Thank you. Any other thoughts? Clean water, what comes to mind? All right, let me ask you another question. Do you know how much clean water we need every day in terms of liters? Any thoughts? 5 liters. 56. Any other takers? It's actually about 80 to 100 liters a day per person. That's the recommendation of the World Health Organization if you want to lead a healthy, active life. So we're here talking about how can we make this happen, especially for underserved communities. And we actually have 3 panelists today. I'm so excited they could join us. So let me introduce you first to Jack Hartpence of Powwater. Thank you, Jack, for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
Great to have you here. So Jack believes that water is the most powerful tool to transform communities. And he started an incredible organization called Powwater in 2017, has built it into an amazing things. And he's talked to me about starting the next Uber for water. So I'm sure that he's going to tell us much more about that today. Thank you so much for joining. Then we have Muntasir Khan next to me from Bob Inc. And at Bob Inc., they call themselves, I love this one, they call themselves hustlers for good. I'm sure he can tell us what they mean with that. But Muntasir is using his experience working in real estate, telecom, education, to help build social business in Bangladesh, and especially reaching the last mile customers and the bottom of the pyramid customers. So thank you so much for joining us and bringing your perspective today. And then finally, last but definitely not least, it's Riad Imam Mahmud. He's the man that convinced me to move to Bangladesh 2 years ago when he shared his passion about delivering clean water to rural communities all over Bangladesh. Now, Riad has a lot of experience working for the government, the World Bank, and different NGOs, always around the topic of clean water. And it's this passion and this experience that led him to establish Max TapWater. Thank you for joining us, Riad.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
So I want to start off the discussion. We'll have a bit of a discussion with each of the panelists first, and afterwards there will also be opportunity for the audience to ask their questions, what they want to know. And when you ask a question, please share your name. If you're directing it to one of the panelists specifically, please let us know who you're directing the question towards. And please, keep it a question. And we don't want to, we're trying to keep this as interactive as possible. So hope you don't mind if we get short questions for the audience, from the audience. And I'm going to start this discussion today with a very simple question, which is, how did you get into water? And I'm going to start the question with Riad, actually. So Riad, how did you come to work in this topic of water? Can you hear us? Oh, I think there's some... Riad, you might be on mute. Okay, I think while we try to figure that out, then let me go to Muntasir first.
Yeah, it comes now.
Oh, okay, there you are.
Sorry, it is not in my control. Okay, so thank you for this question. Particularly, this is my passion to work with water. My whole career is exactly with water. I worked in DPHE for arsenic mitigation, water supply, then World Bank for, uh, though it was the piloting of, now it's a global program. This is sanitation marketing. The piloting name was SSTSB, Sustainable Scaling Up of Sustainable Sanitation. And then I also worked with Shujal, and in Max Foundation to establish MSc, the Max TapWater. Particularly, my vision was to support people so that they can get enough water, because we know the challenge. I'm from the village, and I know how much challenge my mother faced. I know how much challenge I faced personally. So that reflects all the things. And I always dream that people in Bangladesh, in the villages, will get pipe water supply, because this is the best choice to reduce woman labor. Because my mother had to carry water, and I was child, I had to carry water. So I can still remember my labor. It was not so easy task to carrying water from distance to home. And another is that the requirement, particularly when we take bath in ponds, or we use pond water or river water, and nowadays the surface water quality is really decreased. On the other hand, if it is treated or it is taken from groundwater, if it is supplied through pipe water and it reaches to home, then a lot of problems solved. A whole lifestyle changes. So that's why I always thinking of water. In my experience in DPHE, I worked almost 150 pipe water schemes, and then a lot of water supply things. But always a question in my mind: will this water supply shall be always depending on subsidy or government involvement or government support? Why not it is a private sector? Because everything in Bangladesh we can get, even food, cloth, all the necessities are from private sector. Then why not water? So I am trying to find this answer, and that's why I am trying to find this answer by working myself and establishing this company, MSc. Thank you very much.
Thanks for sharing your personal story. Muntasir, same question to you. Why did you get involved in water?
So there is basically two sides of the story to it. So I live. I mean, like my paternal grandfather's house, which is like only 50 kilometers away from Dhaka. But like, if you just travel there, like from the childhood when I used to travel there, I saw like the Podda River was very near to us. But the land beside is not a plain land. So like it's like you have a house, it's like a hillock, and then like you have a ditch, and the ditch basically contains a lot of water but which is totally dirty, and like almost like 9 months of the year you can drink that water. And like when I talk about this, like I was so young, and at that point of time having a tube well was also a luxury at that point of time. So it's not only starts with like drinking water, I also saw like the sanitation issues, like the toilets at that point of time. So it actually raised questions like which I was not able to answer at that point of time. But luckily my career basically drove me to this point, like where I have like the opportunity probably to contribute something to the society. And frankly, like my current organization, like a little bit about popping. So we are basically business consultants, and we work around the globe. Currently we have access to 31 countries where we have our people. uh, the thing is like we very much work with the wash sector, and there are many other sector. And why wash sector is like this is one of the core area like where we found like the basic necessities are not actually meant in the emerging markets. And by emerging markets we mean basically the developing or the underdeveloped countries. So that's how I was able to part of many water businesses in many countries, and like maybe in the way forward I'll be explaining more on that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
look forward to hearing more about that. Thank you. So finally, Jack, can you tell us how did you get involved in water? What's your story? I think you're also on mute.
Sorry about that. Absolutely. Yeah, on August 23rd, 2017, I was in a near-death car accident. And I basically had a near-death experience. And as I looked up and I saw the truck coming and heard it coming, the horn laying down, if you will, what I realized is I'm going to die. And the only place my mind went was to a place of altruism, a place of the moments in my life where I had helped other people. And I walked away from the accident. My car was completely cut in half, but I basically had a second chance to address that question, right? If that's the question we're going to face at the end of our lives, then I needed to alter the way I was living in my current life in accordance to that question. And so then I began to ask myself, what are the world's most pressing problems? And I had a background in data, had worked for presidential campaigns, gubernatorial campaigns in US politics, and realized water is the foundation for quality of life on Earth. And with sustainable access to safe drinking water, what we're able to do is propel communities forward to secondary and tertiary quality of life indicators, such as gender equality, economic opportunity, health, education. These are all such important things, but water is really the catalyst to so many of those things. And so for the past few years, what we've been doing is working in water, both investing into water social businesses, and now building our own social enterprise on the ground in Mombasa, Kenya, where what we're trying to do is basically create transparency in a market that currently lacks transparency. And that's transparency around quality of water, cost of water, and timing of delivery of water. And what we've seen is that the public sector, to my colleague's point, has really struggled in emerging markets to keep up with the needs of the constituents that exist in these different markets. And paired with climate change, this is only a problem that's going to perpetually increase over time. And so the private sector has really come in to fill that vacuum. And what we're trying to do is basically shine a light on it, create transparency to link consumers directly to the private sector that's serving them, that's producing high quality water, so that they can see what's the quality of water, what's the cost of water, what's the timing of delivery, and we can create both quality compression, higher quality water in the market through that transparency, as well as cheaper water over time through cost compression that exists through market dynamics. And so, yeah, so that's a little bit about Powwater and how I got into water.
Thank you. And I think you are already referring to it a little bit. The theme of today's summit and tomorrow is no going back. And I think one of the questions is, so why are the conventional methods, why is it not working? What do we need? Why do we need an alternative way of delivering clean water? And I'd really like to hear your thoughts on this, Jack, and also Riad's thoughts.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start just as I was just speaking. Then we'd love to hear you, Riad. Yeah, in that capacity, the next thing I've really cast my team on working on is zero carbon, zero plastic waste water. How do we do that, right? And right now, some of the things that are inspiring us the most on the ground is the ability to use solar energy to power reverse osmosis and create super high quality drinking water. And if you look at the success of microgrid energy in areas like Africa, I really see that future in water. What's the future of water? It's decentralized, zero carbon production facilities of water. And then what we're trying to now figure out is how do we move that water to the end consumer and back with a zero plastic waste and zero carbon footprint. And is that charging solar bikes? Maybe. Is that using solar powered tuk-tuks? Maybe. But climate change is the biggest threat, and that's one thing that has inspired me so much about Professor Yunus. And, just to tell you a little bit about how we got into this, I came to Bangladesh in early 2020 before coronavirus had started and was at the beautiful YY facility. And I had a chat with Saqib and Professor Yunus about what we were currently doing, which was selling drinkware and investing into these projects. But Professor Yunus really challenged me and he said, hey, what you're doing is crap, as only, Professor Yunus can. And you're sitting there and you're like, he's so right. And really listening to him and figuring out a way that technology can play a role in this. And if we look to how we're going to build the world of tomorrow, or the world of 3 zeros, as Professor Yunus so eloquently puts it, we need to look about how water plays a role in that, because I really do believe it's the catalyst. And once we're able to look at zero carbon, zero plastic wastewater from production to consumption and back, and complete wastewater reusage. That's really key, right? And if you look at areas that are getting the most affected by climate change, right now, Mombasa, Kenya, we're really struggling with saltwater intrusion into the groundwater aquifer. That's all climate change related. And so that's only going to increase. And the water crisis is absolutely key. It's a key thing to this whole problem and the solution of tomorrow.
Thank you, Jack. I'm just looking to see if Riad, are you with us? Okay, we'll give Riad some time to come back. Muntasir, you don't only work with water, you work with a lot of different sectors. Bob Inc. works in lots of different countries. So in terms of like, what can we learn from other countries that, or other sectors, other models that can help us bring clean water forward?
So I think you already asked the question, like which directly points to the market. And the market, I mean, like when we work with any of the businesses, or like in some cases we do our work in a project, like where there are multiple stakeholders, like there are development partners, there is a business partner who is really doing the business or trying to build up it. So we always try to start with the consumer or the customer. So we ask ourselves like what they would prefer, what they would ask for. It's not that like what we are going to push for. Like many of time, basically we are approached by the businesses. So the business, like it could be a water selling business, just clean water. It could be a business like who is trying to sell a toilet. It could be a business who is just trying to say like, hey, I'm trying to collect the waste from the community and dispose it. It could be just a business, someone is putting up some pumps in different places, coming up with like a business model where they can collect money. And it could be a business just like a water filter, and like which is very cheap, like less than a penny, not even $1. So I'm trying to give you an what should I say, like area where you can think of all the varieties of product and all the directions, like from where it comes from. But when you basically take these products to the market, it also varies from market to market because the culture is different, or because the access to different similar kind of product was different previously with the existing or the prospective customers. So let's say I can give you an example. Like you have a water filter, which is just like, let's say in Bangladeshi taka is like 10 taka, and it's made out of paper. So it's also sustainable, it's also cheap, and it's also kind of affordable, right? So you are thinking like, I have a product which is quite affordable, and if I take it to the low income market, probably they will buy it. So you probably think of a district in Bangladesh who needs it most, maybe somewhere in Sirajganj, maybe somewhere in some of the district of South. And you basically take it and try to sell it. Probably people will won't buy it. And the reason is, so, and I'm basically talking from the experience, like the reason is probably that the people who resides there who is not aware of the issues. Because you are probably promoting, hey, I'm supplying clean water, and there is no bacteria. Probably there is also no viruses. So maybe your product also doesn't ensure it. But actually, does the customer care about it? Because to them, probably if they just go to a tube well and just collect the water, they see like, hey, this water is kind of better than the river water or the pond water. Or maybe they will just use a clean kind of cloth, which is clean to them in bare eyes. And they will say like, hey, I have the clean water. So one experiment we have done, like with the customer behavioral acceptance kind of thing, which was like when we understood this approach, we started doing okay, they prefer the clean water by their eyes, not by it doesn't actually carry any bacteria, right? So when we understood there is an issue with the iron, and surprisingly that filter was basically also taking away the iron particles. So that water become much more clearer than before. And the acceptance actually came from the clarity of the water, not the cleanliness of the water, you understand? So that is one thing. And the other thing was like when you talk about scaling this, like you really want to make money out of this, right? Because like the shoulder above your hand will not be there for a long time. I mean the funding or the other things or whatever you have. So to that business to survive, basically they have to also come with other long-term plans. So one is how they can scale. So when we also wanted to scale the products, we found like if someone is buying a water filter, like when someone has already accepted, hey, I want clean water, I know there are viruses and the filters can clean it, and I buy those things like probably like 10 taka, 10 taka, 10 taka every week, and then there is some other particles which you need to buy for those things. So probably they will prefer to buy a 1500 taka water filter, which is a tabletop one. So you see, you basically has converted their mind like you need clean water, but when you basically converted them, they're probably not preferring your product anymore. So the innovation has to continue, or there might be like things you need to consider. Like you need to consider like this is how I ensure the access, and like when my customer actually matures, then probably I should have a second generation product ready already for them. So like this kind of things we really look into, like the aspirations, because you understand, like when I make my, let's say I'm a lady in the very rural village of Bangladesh, and I just understood like I need those things. So I will probably prefer social esteem to have a tabletop filter and try to showcase this to my neighbor. So these kind of things are like very much necessary to look into when you basically design a business model. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that experience. I think it's that example is showing also we learn from our experiences. We don't find the solution to delivering clean water right from the start. And it'll be interesting also to hear from Riad. You know, we're talking today about best practices, but a best practice you have a road towards getting there. So what was your trial and error process during the development of Max TapWater?
Yeah, thank you for asking the question. Water is also a challenge, particularly water is a complex thing, and it involves a lot of societal issues, economic issues, leadership, gender, and governance issues. So it's not only a technical challenge. Particularly, we can solve technicalities with in a better technical challenges and economic challenge. It also involves a lot of external issues and also a lot of stakeholders. So the learning basically started in the government when we were later when I was thinking of privatization or private sector involvement in water supply. I choose pipe water because there are certain issues like, as I mentioned, that climate change is an issue, plastic is an issue. So technology also an option, but it is also costly. So we started with this simple that how can the water supply technical simplification so that less technicality involves, less involves people can invest by their own or local in supply systems. On the other hand, how government can support this and what kind of policy level support is needed. So the trial and error starts when I started with some scheme in Max Foundation. And first scheme we built in Potokali with a size of 60 to 70 households with a simple water structure and non net structure. It is not a kind of network that it is an open network, simply, and also smaller dia piped and less valves, less control structures or equipments. On the other hand, second trial we did in Bagura with several type of schemes. A little bit larger scheme for the municipality and medium-sized scale for some other part of the communities, and very small, that is only 30 to 40 households. And we also tried to use the energy, that is solar power small scheme. On the other hand, is a rural electrification board that powered larger schemes. And later we also tried in the slums with a very small, only 15 household to 40 household size. So this kind of trial we did to understand that where is the efficiency, where the most effective way to do that, what size fits best for a business, how an entrepreneur is really encouraged with the business model. Later, it also led the assumption that made for the business model we developed. We have a business model now for a kind of 60 to 70 households, and the assumptions we learned from this kind of trial and error. Still, there are a lot of challenge. Particularly, we have some tariff and also willingness to pay challenge. Uh, that means the marketing of water should not be on a conventional way. It is a new learning, because usually what people do, they site selected, and some people agrees, okay, we'll take the connection, then a structure built, and then sometimes when the tariff is not suitable, then people are not interested to take the connection, or they need a lot of push. Even they take connection, then there are certain cases that they don't pay or stop paying, or they want to pay low. In that case, business model will not sustainable. So our learning is that it need a huge marketing of and also business development. Particularly when we go for a pipewater scheme, it need a background work at least 1 year to aware the people. On the other hand, create the demand on a market way, and also people should know that this is a private investment, and people have also a kind of share involvement, and people need to learn the value of domestic water supply and how it differs from a hand tube well or a pond water. And it is not always about the drinking water issue. It is always it's also about the gender. It also about the labor equity, because women need to carry the water. Then how pipe water solves this problem? On the other hand, young women need to go to the bathing in outside, that is pond or in canals, and this is also a huge challenge on reproductive health issues, and so maintaining privacy and also managing reproductive health, particularly menstrual hygiene, how pipe water can be valuable for that. So this kind of multiple social issues need to be bring in the scenario to create a real market. On the other hand, it also needs to bring more and more private sector to create the whole market, because as our assumption, this is a 1.6 billion total assurable market for water in Bangladesh, pipe water in Bangladesh. And then one or two business companies is not enough. It needs hundreds of business companies to work together. So it also needs a platform, network, and a good cohesion between the correlation and cohesion between the government and private sectors. That is our learning, and that trial and error we are doing and learning. And we also learned that policy need to be reviewed. The water policy or wash policy in Bangladesh government still need to include the private sector involvement. At this moment, it is PPP or this kind of ideas are given, but there is no host. There is no particular specification or way out that how private sector shall be involved in this kind of water supply systems, and how they will
Thank
bring
you.
money, will supply the capital, or where they can get capital, where the banks are ready to invest money in water supply systems. So this kind of policy level issues also we are learning in our process.
Thank
Thank you very
you.
much.
And Jack, as you mentioned, when you started this, you didn't have a background in water at all. So I'm imagining you had quite an interesting trial and error phase. Would you like to share a bit about that? What did you learn? How did you come to where you're now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that actually happened with Shashir Water in Bangladesh. That was our real life moment. And so we spent a day out in the field, and as we were basically looking for this solution, right, how could we best bring technology to the water crisis? What we realized is that consumers largely had no information around quality and cost of water from many of the vendors which they were purchasing from. And so that's the quality. Does this water have arsenic in it? Does this water have bacterial contamination, et cetera, so on and so forth. And it costs basically not being able to see the real-time market dynamics around what vendors exist in my area, what are they charging, can they get water to my doorstep? And we had asked a gentleman in the field to basically order us water, show us how he ordered water, if you will. And I remember he had a smartphone, an Android smartphone, and this was in the middle of a slum in Singh, Bangladesh. And I looked at one of our co-founders and just kind of looked at him and said, like, watch how he's trying to figure out how he can get this water here, et cetera. And we're thinking to ourselves, wow, that's the opportunity that exists in this market, is to basically build a Uber for water model where we onboard all the vendors in the area, we employ our own delivery force, riders that drive boda bikes, such as like motorbikes or tuk-tuks, and that can carry water. And then we basically just create this linkage where we bring on the network, and then we create a neural network marketplace effect, where now we understand better, and the data is so key for us that you basically look at it and you say, okay, yeah, this area right here doesn't have enough vendors. This area here has a super high problem with quality of water. Well, then we can use that data and make data-driven decisions, and tell organizations, multilateral organizations like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, et cetera, hey, this is where you guys should build a project, or hey, maybe this is where you want to microfinance a project, because one of the biggest things we learn along the way is local engagement is the key thing. And we just learned that over time, that if you're not able to work in a very localized environment, empower entrepreneurs on the ground, like Professor Yunus so incredibly did, through tenants like microfinance, then what you're going to have is you're not going to be able to achieve sustainability in projects over time. And that's why the average shelf life in Africa, to give you some example of a project, is 18 months. And so what you see is you see billions of dollars every year coming in from the West, and we're basically putting a Band-Aid on projects and ripping them off every 18 months. Now, why is that? That's because there's no incentive from Western NGOs to create sustainability in projects, because their numbers need to compound just like profitability. And these are charities we're talking about, where last year they brought clean water to 8 million people. Next year they needed 10 million. The year after, 12 million. So what are they doing? They're looking into places where they build projects, and then they're saying, how many people live here? Okay, this will go into our staff book for the end of the year. And the big money that's coming in isn't asking the question, are those projects sustainable? And that's what brought us to Professor Yunus and to the entire social business movement, was this propensity to have sustainability in projects over time, and achieve that through tenants like microfinance and local engagement and local empowerment. And so that's what we're now essentially trying to do, is build this platform that creates this linkages, this mobile marketplace for water, and link the entire localized market and put the power in the consumer's hand to say, where do I want to purchase my water? And then that's when you cost compression, quality compression, these things that marketplaces are able to do through transparency. And so for us, I mean, that just was a learning process. We started by selling water bottles and investing into the project ourselves. And it took us time to learn, hey, where can we play a role? How can we grow? And I think as an entrepreneur, you just need to be open to hear the universe sending you signs. And a great sign for us was in Bangladesh when Professor Yunus told us, hey, what you're doing is crap. Find out how you can do more. And that's what led us to this moment in time and this ability to have this opportunity.
Thanks so much for sharing that. We're all here. A lot of us are startups, and it's good to hear that it does take time. It's not, we don't have to have everything figured out from day one. It's good to hear also examples from others. I think, Muntasir, you have the benefit of having helped a number of different companies that were working on water sanitation. So in one of those companies, or do you have an example where you thought from the outset, this is such an obvious solution, I'm sure that this is going to work, and it totally crashed and failed, but you'll manage to learn from it?
So there is multiple actually, but maybe I can come up with like few examples. So before I go to the example of Bangladesh, maybe I give you an example from Nigeria. So where there was a very, innovative solution, the company came up with, that was they made a play pump, and I think many of you basically heard of it. So it's like a merry-go-round, but it has handles, multiple, let's say 12 or more. So, but there is no horse. So it goes round and round, and it was meant that like the children from the community, basically they will hold those handles and they will go round and round. And basically when they go round and round, basically they pull out the water from the ground. And that means like now they have clean or fresh water for the community. But now I'm talking about like a very rural village in Nigeria, and like as you know, like in most cases, women who are basically traveling long away to basically collect the water, right? So the children's actually doesn't play all the time, but the women's need the water for like probably in the morning, probably in the noon, and also afternoon, right? So they want to cook, they want to wash something, but the women's are not actually playing like the children's. So the purpose was not served. So often we see innovation or technology like which has a very solid intention to the solution, but it actually doesn't work in the market. So this could be one of the example. Another example I can talk about from Bangladesh, like a startup born out of a development sector. So it's basically born out of an NGO, I should be straight. And we often see it happens nowadays. Like it's not like maybe 10 years back, we have seen a lot of development projects goes for 5 years and it ends. New projects comes in, another NGO takes over the same beneficiaries, they write another 500-page report, and it goes on. But in 2020, it doesn't happen anymore. So we are part of a project in 2019 and 2020 in Bangladesh, and they work in a slum, and a big slum in Dhaka. And like they were offering 3 services. So they were basically supplying piped water, and they were also collecting solid waste, and they were basically selling toilets which can take care of themselves. So they have the technology that like they don't need to clean the pits even. So they have some sort of bacteria who basically eats the the solids. So the thing is like from the business aspect, when you see it from the outside, it looks, wow, they're doing everything. And from the NGO side, they have further works going down the line. Like they were making pavements within the slum, right? They were organizing hand washing day. They were organizing like some other educational stuffs. Now I'm coming to the market aspect of it. So like I don't know like how many of you basically have access to Bhasantek slum. When you basically enter the slum, in the very beginning you will find a toilet, a very big one. It's a toilet. No, I should not call it toilet. It's a toilet complex, and which is made by, I should not say made, like it was funded by DFID, and many other development partners were part of it. And it's a very nice complex. But if you just get inside, it is totally unusable. So the first thing basically popped up when we started working around Bhasantek, like there is no ownership to it. And this is not a product of that social enterprise I'm talking about, but this is the first thing that basically hit our mind. Hey, this is a very nice thing, but no one is almost using it because there is no ownership. So it's not clean, it's overflowing, it's totally dirty, and no one is managing it. Slowly, when we get ourselves more involved into it, we started talking to the customers. We understood a lot of those customers, or like who resides in the Bhasantek slum, they don't own the land. And though some of them are basically staying there for more than 30 years, even though legally probably they don't own it. So these were some of the things which actually hit. Then we probed into like, hey, like how you are paying off for your services, like you're buying water, and like probably they are paying a little bit more than probably they are paying to an illegal connection there. And by illegal connection, it's politically sometimes like forced, and sometimes like there are some musclemans like who are saying, hey, I have the tubal, I have the water tap connection, you take it from here, and it's unlimited. It's like whatever you consume, it's like $100, but which is not sustainable. Like this, they are probably screwing the WASA connection. Anyway, but the startup who are basically buying water from WASA, laying up those costly pipelines in the slum, and they're making sure all the customers have like a tap inside, and that tap actually supplies clean water. they are not promoting it as a totally drinkable because they are quite sure, but they're in doubt. So they're saying we are supplying clean water, so you can basically take a shower, clean your clothes, cook with that water. So that was one thing. The other thing also they're trying, I said like they are sending some of the vans. So which is nice to the community. They're collecting the waste and they're also trying to sell the toilets. So slowly we went by, we encountered a few problems like how the clients are paying for these things, because we also tried to understand their income pattern, and in most of the cases they spend more than basically they earn. So that was very interesting. No, then we tried to understand like, hey, like what is the perception for the customers to that? And surprisingly we understood like the customer said like they're kind of confused, but because someday people are coming and saying, hey, can you wash your hands, this is good for your health. Can you basically go to a clean toilet, this is good for your health. And the next day the probably same guy coming in and saying like, hey, we have these 3 services, you have to pay for it. So they're confused, it's an NGO or it's a social enterprise. So the point I'm trying to make, like when social enterprises are born out of the NGO, they also suffer a lot from the identity crisis. So that was totally like a brand. They're not having a brand. So as Bopping, we worked on their total marketing strategy and tried to basically convince it not from a wash perspective. We came up with a lot of social engagements. Like I think for the first time we have organized, like you have seen in US, like people take their cars and like watch movies in the open air. So we made those kind of arrangements and not even talked about any kind of wash issues. Rather basically pointing out people's toilet and other things, and like community was engaged. Like people are saying, hey, this is the toilet from your house, this is quite torn down, this is my toilet, this is quite okay. But unconsciously they're basically pointing out themselves to a better lifestyle. Unconsciously they're asking for it. Maybe the like the earning guy from the family sometimes is not getting that point, but the children are asking for it, the women is asking for the clean water. So it's creating demand. That was one. And the next thing we did, like we came up with a lot of BCC materials. It's not like leaflets and other things, it's like what they enjoy at that point of time in 2020. If you even go to the slum, you see people like small kids, they have fun, they are playing that game, I forgot it, like the most common one, like they play in group, like Clash of Clan type things. So they have the technology. So you need to identify like what media you will also use to let the information follow. And subsequently what we did, like we came up with a lifestyle brand which was called let's skip the brand, like we came up with the theme, like we said like life is tension free. So it's not talking about toilet, it's not talking about the waste collection, it's not talking about the um, uh, supplying of water. Rather it was saying like if you're part of that brand or if you're basically subscribing to it, your life is tension free. So it was a total overhaul. Probably if you have seen it, like it would probably look like a commercial thing, and I'm proud of it, like it looks like commercial because you're selling something. So I think there is nothing wrong like when you are also doing a social business that you can't go for a commercial look, and I think to survive you need it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So let's move to another question. And I think the theme of today of this session is best practices. So whenever that's the theme of a session, my first question is always in my head, so what is the best practice? And that's something that I would like to ask to both Riad and Jack. If you had to choose the one thing that you wish to share with the audience, the one thing from your model or your approach that you think like this is our best practice, this is the example for everyone, what would it be? So I'm going to ask the question first to Riad.
Yeah, for water supply, this practice particularly what we think that why it is best or why I shall play this practice or this. There are certain indicators or elements we need to consider. Say how it matches with the present time and also how it fulfills the requirement of future. So that also a kind of connectivity with the sustainability. That is whether we are solving a problem for today or we are thinking to solve or sustain a solution for tomorrow. So when things about tomorrow, then it also includes some particular issue. say, what about the water data? How we get information from people, how people are connected with a certain service and certain demand. Then data is an important thing. That is, when we are thinking about data in water supply and how you utilize data to create a data-driven solution, then it becomes quite different, and it also makes a kind of a long-term sustainable opportunity to give it a best practice indicator. On the other hand, finance. How a finance is easy. So when we are thinking about pipe water or any water supply system, always costly, very costly. The treatment plant is costly. Maintenance is more costly than it is its installation. On the other hand, pipe water supply, if you think large pipe water supply system, large pipes, a lot of cost. Whole system is costly, and a lot of blank pipes are there. So how we can change the technology to fit with the local investment capacity? That means it can be affordable for both end, by the consumer and by the industry. That means smaller pipetted scheme can be a solution. Always it is not the end, it is a solution. There are more solutions like this. So reducing the investment cost by simplifying the technology, that is a kind of indicator of this. Number three is how people adapt to this kind of system. That means people have to agree to pay for pipewater supply. On the other hand, it was also mentioned in this discussion earlier that the dignity filling, that means the payment is not for a safe water only. The payment is for a dignity, a social status, a overall health benefit for the whole family and the society, and also it also returns a good gender outcome, a good equity outcome, and also equalize lifestyle in urban and also in a rural sector. In urban, we are entering pipewater supply so that we can wash hand with the basin and we can flush toilets. In the rural, pipewater also brings the opportunity to wash hand in a hand basin and use a shower for bathing. And on the other hand, it also involves a lot of other stakeholders. That means a plumber, a sanitation supplier, like the for pipe water, that the typical pit latrine or this kind of basic latrine is not suitable. That means it needs better quality latrine so that the flush toilet can be or flushing can be. On the other hand, improvement of drainage so that it don't overflood the society or in the around the households. And level of wastewater also an important thing because the pipe water supply that will create a huge load of water that is not usually needed. How it is better, how we can use the wastewater in a better productive way. Can we drain it to the river? No, we have to reuse this water. And culture field are the better opportunity to use water, which is not possible in urban.
Thank you. So
that's why that we are trying is the best.
thanks, Riad. I guess the same question to you, Jack. What's your best practice after this long road of discovering, trying, developing?
I think for us, the thing that excites us most is data, for sure. I definitely would echo Riad there. An example I'd use of that is looking at, Professor Yunus and many world leaders have been very vocal recently with the COVID vaccine. Now, if you look at many companies that have developed the COVID vaccine, they're holding their biometric pattern to themselves, and they don't want anyone else to produce it, and they're trying to monetize that to the best extent of their ability. And if you think about that, your legacy as a company with a choice like that is very short-sighted, right? Because you're looking at short-term profit over long-term gain for the human race. And one thing that I have thought about in regards to that is, imagine if one of the companies, I won't name any of them, we all know them, that has developed this vaccine, said, hey, we're going to release our biometric pattern for the world. and we want everyone to be able to produce it, and we're gonna solve this pandemic. The value in that company long term, I believe, would far exceed the short term monetization, because they'd be the one company in the world that did it. It'd be a household name everywhere. But it's so short-sighted. And so when we look at water and the data that we're collecting, what we're really trying to do is open up the data for organizations alike to use for the entire, right now, water is very fragmented. And you have organizations, both for-profit, non-profit, all work, multilaterals, all working in water, and all collecting data. And for the most part, not sharing that data. So if you look at Kampala, Uganda, you might have 5 NGOs from the US all working on water in Kampala, all fighting over resources, all trying to get the necessary number of people impacted, right, to go back to the same donor pool to convince them that they're working in a sustainable manner or creating impact. But what we're trying to do is take the data and actually unleash the data and saying, hey, this is for the world. These are 4 multilateral organizations to use. Let's look at this and let's add to it. And long-term, looking at how we can best use the data that we're collecting that's very valuable, and not just say, hey, this is the monetization thing, and actually prioritize impact over monetization. And where, what we think is that long-term, that's incredibly more valuable than holding the data for ourselves or, investors, stakeholders, what have you, could be, because that's what we want to go down for as a company, is a social enterprise that walk the walk and talk the talk. And for us, that's all about sharing the data and collecting super valuable data and not holding it for ourselves. And I think that's the future of the world. I think if you look at technology and you look at how a lot of consumers far and wide throughout the world are now pressuring technology companies and what they're doing with the data, our data should be our data, and it should be used to solve the world's most pressing problems, not for our company to just monetize. And so that's how we view it. I think that's the future.
Thank you. So in the spirit of, sharing and opening up, I think I want to open it up now to see if there are any questions from the audience. Is there anyone who likes to ask a question to either Muntasir or Jack or Riad online? All right, just have a think about it. I think I have one other question, which is, this is also, we're here as a youth summit, and I think there's always this image also when we want to approach the government or when we want to approach institutions like the World Bank, which are run, let's face it, they're run by often older engineers, bureaucrats, and it's like whenever we come with our ideas, like we're super excited as social startups, we come with our ideas and they're like, but we've always done it this way, we don't want to change. So how do we approach the government? How can we approach big institutions like the World Bank or the UN to make a change? I think Muntasir, Riad, anybody wants to weigh in on that? If the audience has ideas, if you have experience in approaching the government and trying to get them engaged, please share as well.
Thanks, Maartje. The question looks very simple, but the approach is always difficult to government. It's not in Bangladesh, it's in every country. So there is nothing to be surprised. So basically, when you approach government bodies, they're actually already bogged down with a lot of things, especially in our countries. They're doing a lot of things. And as you mentioned, probably they're engineers or bureaucrats. So they have their own way of thinking. So I just want to give one example. I think 4 years back, I went to one of the ministry and also different bodies under it. And I was at that point of time working with a financial inclusion product. So we had the concept in mind, but we don't have anything. So we went there and said hey, we are planning something like this. Can you tell us what are the challenges we might face? What are the restrictions or the legal things we might need to follow? And the person, or should I say the top guy, he was laughing and saying always do not come to us for asking permission. Maybe you do something, go to a certain stage, then come up with a concrete idea which has the proof of concept, and then say hey, we have done it, now what should we do? So it's what I'm trying to say is like you don't empty your bag, but like you at least have the proof of concept to some level, like which makes it explainable, believable, and also like in some way like it should look sustainable from all the aspect. Like when you talk about also government bodies, right? So they should also have enough interest to it, which also relates to the country or their policy dynamics. So I think to me that is the way forward.
Thanks. So Riad, I'm curious to know how you feel. You've been on the other end. You've worked with the local government, with the World Bank. Basically, Muntasir is saying, go for it and show them your solution and they'll follow. Has that been your experience, or do you have other advice for us?
Yeah, that's a kind of very nice question, and also the answer is complex. Particularly, the government have a way of intake a certain kind of policy. Government have a procedure, and this is a standard procedure that government follows. On the other hand, how we are approaching the government, that also a issue, that whether we are matching with the standard or we are going along with that. That means the evidence is one important issue. Without evidence, we cannot approach government. This is one way of working with the government. Evidence is not just a technology. Evidence is not just a kind of arrangement. It's a kind of very specific data, very specific figure, and a visible or tangible examples that the government can see, that the government can realize, okay, that will be useful for the country or a large portion of the nation. And government always ready to support this kind of things, because as we see after the liberation of Bangladesh, how this government is very different and more progressive than any other government in past. So that's why it is also a issue about how a government really interacts with the necessities and the demands. So in past it was a challenge. Now the challenge is getting lower. So you can approach the government with a lot of new ideas, because the bureaucrats or the officials in the sector are more innovative. They are quite knowledgeable. They are open to talk to you. So the openness is increasing. So the opportunity is increasing. Now it needs a concrete proposal. We need to discuss with the government how government can invest in pipe water supply or water supply solutions, how bank can be involved, in where the bank will give the money and with which trust. Because if bank ready to pay money, then bank also need to have a kind of due diligence on that business model. They need to have its trust. That means we have to provide those evidence and models so that government can believe, okay, this is a real solution, and then we expect that government will be positive on that. Otherwise, we are doing nothing and we are asking just to do everything by government. That is really not fair. So we have to bring evidence that Muntasir said is true, and it also need to cooperate government. So it is like working, holding hand together. So when we start working something, then let's involve government so that they know what we are doing. Let bring their ideas also, because a lot of talented people work in the government. They have a lot of ideas, even better than us. So bring those ideas also in this kind of things. And finally, the business sector is opening. This government is very favorable or supportive to the business sector, as well as NGOs are also working a lot. So the stakeholders need to work together. If we start working only selflessly, or just we say, okay, it is I, then success rate will be very low. If it is we, and it's a big we, then success rate will be much higher.
So it sounds like you're both saying, don't be afraid to reach out to the government, but come with some concrete idea and preferably some evidence to back up your idea, and then that will make them a lot more likely to listen to you. So that's very good advice. Thank you both. And you were also referring, Riad, to and earlier as well, to sharing and different water enterprises, different water businesses coming together. We talked earlier about the importance of data. And And I'd also like to hear from you, Jack, about, because I know for you this data aspect is super important, and what can we do to learn more from each other? How can we come together as the clean water sector and support each other? You know, you work in Kenya, we work in Bangladesh, but I think a lot of the issue might be similar. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. You know, the thing about the water crisis is it's this exponentially growing problem. And it's not just a problem in markets that it's been a problem in for the last, ever. It's a problem everywhere in the world now. And it's a growing exponential problem. And that's from Southern California to London to all these places that, as climate change occurs, we're going to see have a real problem with water. And so, what I think is that the private sector here is really critical. And while, not to piggyback on the government question, I mean, I'm more speaking in a macro government way, because, of course, I'm no expert on Bangladeshi government like these other gentlemen. But macro sense, when we look at government, what we see is that there's a lot of failing. And there even can be moments where the government solutions that they're building don't have a time horizon of being sustainable when we look through the lens of climate change. And so I think what we need to do is the private sector really needs to innovate. We need to see business come in and create viable market solutions. The public sector is failing not only in emerging markets, largely speaking, but also in the Western world. I mean, and that's from Flint, Michigan to Denver, Colorado, where now there's a lead problem, and their solution is sending every citizen a Brita filter, and saying, hey, use this filter and this will help you with lead, and that's because of their problems with reticulated piped water. And so I think the private sector needs to come in here, and we need to look at new solutions. And I think innovations and doing it through the lens of climate change. But there's so many problems I see with the municipal sector globally when it comes to their piping. Pipes are leaky. Pipes are really expensive. And then let alone we have a lot of main pipes that are working quite well. It's where's the piping cost? Secondary and the tertiary lines. So, I mean, I think, long story short, I'm a big fan of the private sector. I think they're going to be key here, and we're just going to need to create market viable solutions that can run sustainably to have a shot. And the thing is, Maartje and team here, like, that's going to happen. I mean, as the water crisis perpetuates, the cost of water is going to exponentially grow. And so what you're going to see is, as public utilities continue to fail, the private sector is going to have to come in, and that's going to be through necessity. And it already has. But now I think we need to take it to the next level and look at large macro solutions. And then how can the private sector work with the people with the financing? And that's the World Bank, that's the United Nations. Those are multilaterals that say, hey, one of our goals is SBYS. We'll come in and finance it through the private sector that we know can grow, and that's a localized, engaged private sector. But I think it's going to happen. I think it's the only solution I can really think of, because I don't know how much faith you can put in public utilities to solve this when it would have been solved 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. It would be solved right now. So to think it's going to be solved by the public sector in 10 years, I think, is history repeats itself, and the definition of insanity is repeating the same thing over and expecting different results. And so that's my take.
Thank you. So this morning, Professor Yunus spoke to us about the power of imagination. And so I think as we're sort of approaching the end of the panel discussion, I want to ask each of you, what is your half-crazy, counterintuitive, imaginary prediction about the next 5 years in water business? What do you think or hope is going to happen?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but like I said, like I'm working with a lot of wash enterprises also in Bangladesh, and they come in different shape and manner. So, like some of them just sell some sort of sink where you can wash your hand. Some of them have ATMs. Some of them have just a filter, which is pretty cheap. Some of them has pipe connections who supplies water. Yeah, some of them have bottles who supplies water. But the thing is, like, when I look into it, uh, like I kind of like look into and super aligned with also Jack on like things will be very much data driven and private sector led for sure. And that is the only way you make sustainable business. I think that understanding is already there in the market. But even though like looking into this social business space, uh, I kind of struggle myself finding out new enterprises into the wash sector. I think you remember also a few days back we were discussing, like I'm currently also working with a funder organization, global one, and like they're also looking for innovative wash solutions in Bangladesh. And like as their partner, like I think, okay, we're back. So as their partner, we were pretty much looking for new wash enterprises in Bangladesh. And it's pretty hard to get a new one. Pretty hard to get a new one who has the private sector mindset, even a trade license, you understand. So the opportunity is still there, and like we are looking forward that like new young entrepreneurs will show up. I'm quite sure like they will show up and they will come up with different technology-based solutions, because the basic is already there. The base has been already developed. I think like if those young entrepreneurs comes up, like we have a very great future ahead on this.
Thanks. Riad, what's your crazy prediction about the next 5 years? Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I always like to align my dreams with the future, particularly when I dream or I see, I always try to understand a prediction that how a dream will be realized. If I see the future market of water and the reality says it will be one of the top business sector in Bangladesh within upcoming years. Either in, of course, the primary show up will be done within these 5 years, and within a decade, it will be one of the top investment area. Particularly, the water will need a nature-based solution. It need an environmentally sustainable solution. It need a climate change responsive solution. On the other hand, the microplastic nowadays is polluting the whole surface water and as well as the seawater. Then another water crisis is upcoming, that you cannot take fish from the sea because of microplastic. Then what about water? So that means protection of water will be also another business. It is not only supply of water, protection of water, storage of water, and efficient use of water in irrigation, in drinking water, and in industries are another sector. So as a whole, water sector will be one of the biggest sector, largest sector. It is not only in Bangladesh, it will be worldwide. So we have to get ready to work with this huge upcoming. So we have to get mentally ready, we have to get financially ready, we have to get technically ready. And of course, a huge number of young entrepreneurs need to be involved. They need to learn how to be an entrepreneur with water, and also need to work with government to give this kind of strength, or working with government, so that government also aware about this and government also get ready or prepare in future fiscal planning for funding this kind of investment and also solutions. So this is my prediction.
Thanks. Jack, what do you imagine about the future of water in the next 5 years?
Yeah, Riad, that was brilliant. I completely agree with you that in the next 5 years we're going to see. Water crisis is something we've heard about. How many times? Everyone hears about the water crisis, and sure, even a little kid, water crisis, water crisis, water crisis. But what we're seeing is we're really in the first innings of this, and we don't know how it's going to go. And 5 years is is a long period of time. And I think to Riad's point, in 5 years, we're going to see the spotlight come on water in a capacity that it isn't right now, and that it definitely will be. And that also, to Riad's point, isn't just fresh drinking water. That's also the sea. That's also the ocean. I mean, what's happening there is catastrophic. And so how does that affect everything? You know, everything is interconnected. And I think when we look at water and we look at the attention that's going to happen to it, that also correlates with the trend of, to my other colleague's point, that everyone's going to be looking at water in 5 years. Everyone's going to be looking at it as a hot market where entrepreneurs are, where investors are coming in, where there's market opportunity. And so the two, I think, are very correlated. And then lastly, what I hope we can see and what I believe we need to see is, as I alluded to earlier, zero carbon, zero plastic waste water. If we can achieve that as a society, as a global society, then I think that is a tremendous feat and something that needs to be accomplished when it comes to water. And how can we look at the entire life cycle of water and make it as sustainable as possible, from production to consumption to the other side, turning waste back into reproduced water. And that life cycle is so important. And so, yeah, I think that there's some great points there. It's, you know, it's all of those things. And when I look at the future of water, I'm incredibly optimistic. I really am, because water is life, and we all need water to live. And so, if there's one problem for humanity to really solve in the near term, I think it's probably water, because that's something that's so critical to life. And so, I'm really optimistic about water. I think the future of water is bright, and I think it's conversations like these that can inspire the next batch of great entrepreneurs and great ideas. And so, so kudos to my fellow panelists, and great job, Maartje. It's a pleasure speaking with everyone today. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing your optimism, Jack. That's good to hear. We just got a question in from one of our online audience members, which was about what are some of the transportation challenges faced when we're trying to reach especially remote areas. So I want to ask this question to Muntasir, because I think you've had some experience in that area. Oh, can we get another microphone?
Hello? Okay, I think it's back. So one of the area we also work is basically the route to market for different products and services. And the big problem for water is like when we talk about small businesses and pretty much rural and semi-urban vicinities, it's not, we are talking about always piped connections, because those pipe connections are probably microgrid oriented businesses, which is like a community-based thing. But when you think about transporting water in a chore area, which is a river island, or when you are talking about transporting water in a, like where there is not a good road, then it's really a travel, basically also to use those things like a tricycle van and those kind of thing. And I think still what I have seen in Bangladesh, like those are the only ways. Recently, just last week, I was traveling to the south of Bangladesh, especially Khulna, Bagherhat, those areas. There is an upgrade. The van is no more like human driven. So the van is now battery driven. So you see the technology is taking over, and it's helping the humans. So I think these challenges always remain when you talk about very rural markets. So people will find new ways, and like based on my experience, I can say like microgrids, not only in water sector, also in solar sectors, like they will probably prevail. They will slowly, gradually probably prevail. And like just like private sector owned business, like there will be community owned businesses in rural areas. So it is just a matter of time, like you need to inject the power of entrepreneurship to the local youths. Because I have seen a lot of youths in rural Bangladesh, like who have the capacity to work. They have enough land from their fathers and forefathers, but they are not going back to farming. So they're not going to do plowing or like irrigation, those kind of work. Not 100% of them, but most of them. So now they are also coming to the service sector. So either they're micro distributing something, some product or like effective goods of other companies, or they're into some sort of business. So the mindset is already there, and probably like they will be part of it. And there are other solutions which is technological, which might also exclude the like the logistic. That means like you taking the water from point A to B. Recently, I have came into touch with a company like who basically have some sort of solar panels, like where you can also put saline water, and it has a membrane in it, so it basically filters your saline water to basically drinkable water. So these are also like geography based solutions. So it's not probably, I'm saying like if you just install those things in the northern part of Bangladesh and people will like it, I don't think so. But probably in the southern part, this will have enough demand. So I would say like there is no straightforward answer to it, but it's more geographical, it's more context oriented, and yeah, it's gonna change based on this.
Great. Thanks for answering the question. So we're almost out of time, and I think it's time now to wrap up a few things. And just to summarize the discussion a bit, I think all three of our panelists, you've discussed the importance of marketing, of making sure that the product connects with the consumer, and that maybe just marketing it as clean water is not always going to cut it. But it's very important to us, but maybe there's another aspect of it, such as the convenience, that's more imperative for the customer. And I think another key theme of our discussion has been the importance of data and of evidence, and building forward on that and helping that to bring us all to the next step. So with that, I want to give one final round to each of our panelists. Just your final words, a short plug for what you're doing, what you're working on, what wisdom do you want to share with the crowd? Let me start with Riad.
Yeah, my final word is to think about knowing each other and holding hands together, because we have different solutions in our bag. We need to bring together, because one solution is not a universal solution. It don't fit everywhere. So different geographical area and the society have different type of challenge, and we have to solve the different solutions. But all these solutions need to be known to each other, so that we can help each other to solve the problem of the society. So we are working in the South Coastal area. We are also working in the saline prone area. In saline prone area, pipe water supply is not possible. Then whatever the alternate, an RO, reverse osmosis, or it is a rainwater. We need both of the technologies, which fits better with which societies. That means we need to hold hands together. We need to work together. Even if we need to run, then we need to run together. So that is togetherness. I would like to give a final message to build a business sector, because the business is a sector. It is not an individual organization. So we need to bring us together and need to work together, and we need to speak together and need to raise voice together. So this is my final words for this session. Thank you very much.
Jack, what's your final plug, your final words from the perspective of Powwater?
Yeah, transparency is key. In order to build the world of tomorrow, we need to have transparency in business. And for us with water, it's no different. Consumers need to know what's the quality of the water I'm drinking, what's the cost of the water I'm buying. And being able to see that creates tremendous market effects and can make water higher quality and cost affordable over time. And so that's something that really, really excites us at Powwater, putting the power in the consumer's hand to make these decisions. And then the neural network capacity of it, understanding where water is moving, what is the quality in these particular areas of vendors, what is the cost average, and then using that data to make data-driven decisions for impact, right? That's something that really, really excites us as well. So having transparency and then using data the right way is something that's really important. And then the third thing I would just mention is never give up, right? Don't ever give up, right? Because all we are is our dream. And we're going to face adversity. We're going to have to pivot. what we think is right now is going to change in years, in 5 years, in 10 years. We don't know where the water crisis is going. We know it's serious, and we need to put more account on it because it is so serious, but we don't know where it's going. And so let's be open to work with each other with open hearts and open minds. And let's be ready to pivot together if we need to down the road to a solution that we think can achieve sustainability over time. And so once again, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here, and I've really appreciated my time today with you all. Thank you.
Yeah. Like we often get inspired by seeing solutions from the developed world, right? Like I myself often get inspired by seeing a water treatment plant in California, which supplies water to the whole Nevada, right? Then the treatment plant in Dubai, like who don't even have enough water to drink, but they're supplying it with like many other contexts, even with luxury. So I think those are the inspirations I take myself. So I think the entrepreneurs in Bangladesh, they should be also looking into those kind of solutions. And I remember you saying like I was involved in real estate and other FMCG and businesses. So if you just look into the real estate market of Bangladesh as well. So we have been speaking about almost the small businesses and the rural and semi-urban concepts so far throughout the session. But there is a big market lying in Dhaka city, Chittagong city, or Khulna metro, this kind of big cities itself. So probably our entrepreneurs are not looking into that market. But like, like we are running out of water. The aquifer of Dhaka city, like I saw a report like probably 10 years back. Like at that point of time, WASA and some other research institute, they already mentioned like it's dangerously low. And this has other climate and like geographic effect, geometric effect, like earthquake and those kind of things. So slowly probably we'll move to Buriganga to another river. So it's high time we look into those kind of solutions and invest there, like renewable solutions. So I'm trying to basically indicate that things. And at the very end of the session also, like as I mentioned, like I am currently working with a funder, like who is trying to invest on like businesses involving in wash sector, not necessarily in wash, probably those teams and like those enterprises have some other technologies. They're contributing to some other sectors right now, but they have the big idea and to basically use their technology to contribute for the wash sector, they are most welcome, and I'll be open to like share more info to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So those are all three great messages that I don't really need to add to them. Riad spoke about working together, about togetherness. Jack said, don't ever give up. And Muntasir said, take your inspiration wherever you can take it. So I want to leave it at that. We're almost out of time. Muntasir and I are here today. If you have further questions about either Bopping or Max TapWater, you can find us and ask everything to us. And Jack has agreed that I can share his email address if you want to reach out to him, and he'll be happy to answer any questions.
Share my email also.
Sorry?
To me. If any question to me, then I can also answer. Let's share my email. Yeah. I'll be happy to answer.
Great, thank you, Riad. So I'm also happy to share Riad's email as well. So with that, only one thing left is to give a big round of applause to all of our three panelists. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.